Hi, welcome to Policy Atlas. I'll be demoing an alpha version of the tool. So the first thing the user will do is input their research question. And so I'll run this example search around interventions to increase the resilience of healthcare infrastructure. Next, the user will be guided through a structured search process, which helps them refine their question. We've designed Policy Atlas around the PICO framework, so these questions elicit the user to think about the target populations, any intervention settings, and outcome measures that they may be interested in. These selections are LLM generated, and the user can also optionally add their own inputs to these. They can also add additional criteria such as implementation constraints, which can filter the evidence based on cost, staffing, and complexity of the interventions that are found. These are based on LLM assessments of the evidence. The user can also input any additional screening factors to be taken into account. And so all of the inputs that the user just put in will be taken into account for the screening and assessment of the evidence downstream. Next, the user can define filters on where to pull the data from. So Policy Atlas is constrained in its data sources so that it only uses trusted evidence. So it has access to two databases. One is OpenAlex, an academic literature database, which indexes published journal articles from across the globe. The other source is Overton, which is a literature database that indexes published documents from governments, both at a national and provincial level, as well as think tanks, NGOs, IGOs, etc. The user can set a retrieval limit, which defines the number of documents to screen from each source, as well as any filters on publication dates or geographies. Next, you'll see a summary of the search inputs, as well as an estimate for the time to complete. Now, because of the way Policy Atlas is designed with a comprehensive analysis pipeline, which screens, assesses, extracts, and synthesizes evidence, a typical search does take around half an hour to complete at the moment. So I'll just switch over to a completed search. So the first thing that Policy Atlas will do when a search is running is it will make calls to those two databases. So it will translate the user's inputs and research question to a Boolean query for OpenAlex and a semantic query for Overton and retrieve the top documents from each of those. It will then perform a relevance assessment, which compares the titles and abstracts of those papers against the user inputs and defines which papers are relevant to the evidence base needed to answer this question. And here you can see the LLM's reasoning for each document that was included. Next, we categorize the evidence into different classifications. So, for example, systematic reviews, RCTs, observational studies, etc. And based on this evidence categorization, we give each document an evidence strength score, which takes into account the strength of the methodological strength of the evidence. So, for example, systematic reviews are given higher scores versus things like policy guidance and modeling given lower scores. Next, we'll run structured extractions from the full text of the papers if it's available. We'll extract data points such as the populations, the interventions, the outcome measures, the effect sizes, and various other bits of information. Based on these extractions, we will calculate an impact score for each of the papers, and this is defined by the direction of the outcome measures, the magnitude, the causal strength, as well as the match to the user's context in terms of the population and the setting. Next, once we've processed each document individually, we use LLMs to run thematic analysis, in which we'll cluster all of the different types of extractions. So things like the key issues that are described in the background sections, the different types of interventions, and the outcome measures, and draw out the high-level themes from across the evidence base. So you can see here, there's various different types of interventions that we can do to build healthcare resilience. And the user can click into each of those to see a synthesis of what's contained within the evidence for each of those themes. So you can see here a narrative summary of the impact of the different specific interventions that are described in this group, an overview of the different types of evidence, what the outcome measures are, and what the consensus from within the evidence base is, assessments of the context, the implementation requirements, and any risks that were drawn out. And then the user can can go down into various levels of details, right down to the individual documents for auditability. Next, we produce a narrative synthesis, and this uses agentic RAG to first gather the evidence from the previous steps of the analysis pipeline, then generate cited content, and then which then goes through a verification loop for grounding before being served to the user. So you can see here we've produced a cited narrative summary, first with a core finding which directly addresses the research question, and then various sections below. And for each of these citations, there's a unique quote that's picked out to back the specific claim that's made each time a document is cited. And so if we click on this, we can see the quote in context, as well as metadata about the document, and the various assessments that have been done in previous steps of the pipeline. The user can also click through to the original document from here. The narrative synthesis contains multiple sections. So there's a core finding, the policy background, and then a narrative synthesis of the key interventions. So these are the themes that were drawn out in the previous step, explanation of the context, and the key study that's picked out from the strength of evidence and impact scores. We also summarize the outcomes of the key study, as well as the broader evidence that sits within each theme. Next, we produce a cross-document synthesis. So this tries to draw out various similarities from across the evidence base. So you can see here, it's produced a section on key success factors and implementation challenges. Finally, based on all of the previous bits of analysis, the system produces recommendation sections. So these are key next steps for policy that are grounded in the evidence base.